Daf Yomi Tractate Bava Metzia, page 15a. The PL 89 calendar. In the Daf Yomi calendar, to understand the Sod HaIbur, the secret of intercalation, and other ideas about time, and correlating the Daf Yomi with the sun, the moon, and the idea of the planet Mercury. Today, the Daf of 15 in Bava Metzia will be for March 14th, which is Pi Day. And the Hebrew date will be the fourth day of Adar Sheni, which on this calendar comes out on box number 24. And March 13th falls out on box 29. And the Julian calendar is on TD1, which is 10-day twilight 1. February 29th was the last day, which is box 40. And 10-day twilight number 1. They're generally 10 days, but not always 10 days, because 10-day twilight is a 10-day period between a month and the next cycle, the next mercurial year, or 90 days. And this year it would have gone to Nisan, but no, it was a leap year. So this section here, the section is from 38. This is Adar. It just goes one again. These last three rows. Let's see what the Daf has for today. Bava Metzia 15a. The Talmud says, at the top of the page, with Shenitalu Masikin, that thugs took the field from the robber by force due to previous dealings with them. In that case, when the robbery victim comes to collect the principal, he collects from lien property, and when the property victim comes to collect payment for the produce, he can collect only from unsold property. The Gemara explains, Rava did not state this explanation of the Braita in accordance with the explanation of Rabba bar Rav Huna, because the phrase, it is appropriated from his possession, indicates that the field was taken from him legally and not by thugs. And Rabba bar Rav Huna did not state his explanation of the Braita in accordance with the explanation of Rava, because of the phrase, it is appropriated from his possession, indicates that the field is appropriated in its unadulterated form and was not damaged. Rav Ashi stated that the Braita teaches its rulings disjunctively. According to Rav Ashi, the Braita is referring to a case where one robbed another of a field while it was full of produce, and he consumed the produce and sold the field. When, after the true owner recovers the field from purchaser, the purchaser comes to collect the principal from the robber. In other words, the amount that he paid for the field, he collects it from the robber's lien property. When the robbery victim comes to collect payment for the produce, he collects only from unsold property. The Gemara raises a difficulty. According to both Rava and Rabba bar Rav Huna, the money that the robber owes the robbery victim has the status of a loan by oral agreement, as it is not accompanied by documentation, and one who is owed a loan by oral agreement cannot It's funny how agreement and argument are very similar in sound. Cannot collect from lien property. Hachaba Mayaskina? What are we dealing with here? Kishamad Bedin Hadar Zamin. The case where the robber stood trial for his robbery, was found guilty, and he subsequently sold the land. Since he sold it after his liability was well known, the debt is equivalent to one that is written in a promissory note and can be collected from lien property. Gemara asks, if so, the owner should collect payment from the produce as well as from lien property. The Gemara answers, it is referring to a case when the robber stood trial for the principal, but did not yet stand trial for the produce. The Gemara asks, and why was it stated without qualification? According to this explanation, the distinction is not between the principal and the produce, but rather between debts for which the robber stood trial and those for which he did not stand trial. The Gemara answers, the normal way of things is that when a person files a claim, he first claims the principal, and only afterward does he file claims with regard to other property, such as produce. The Gemara questions the statement that Rav Nachman cited Shmuel's name. But does Shmuel hold that one who buys land from a robber does not have the right to the value of the enhancement of the land? But didn't Shmuel say to Rav Hinana bar Shilat, who was a scribe, when you write a deed of sale, consult with the parties, and if they agree, write that the seller commits to compensate the buyer in the event that land is appropriated from him with superior quality land, and for the value of the enhancement of the land and the produce as well. That was the standard formula for deeds of sale. The Gemara clarifies, to what case is this statement referring? If it is a case where the seller's creditor repossesses the land, does a creditor have rights to the produce? But doesn't Shmuel say that a creditor collects the value of the enhancement of the field, indicating that he does collect the value of the enhancement, but he does not collect the produce? Rather, is it not referring to a case of one who buys land from a robber and the owner subsequently repossesses it? This contradicts Shmuel's earlier statement that one who buys land from a robber does not have the right to the value of the enhancement. Rav Yosef said, here we are dealing with a case where the robber owns land which he can return to the buyer instead of paying him money. In that case, the transaction appears to be a sale and not payment of interest for a loan. Abaye said to him, but is it permitted for one to borrow a se'ah grain for return of a se'ah in a case where he owns land? The sages render prohibited executing a loan of produce for return of the same amount of produce, lest the price rise in the interim, causing the debtor to return a higher value than he borrowed, which appears to be interest. This is the halacha even in a case where the borrower owns land. Similarly, in the case where the robber owns land, the payment of the value of the enhancement resembles the payment of interest. Rav Yosef said to him, the distinction between the two cases is that there, with regard to borrowing a se'ah and returning a se'ah, the case in question involves a loan, whereas here it is a case involving a sale. Since the field was brought from the robber, the additional value of the robber pays does not appear to be interest. Wow, there's a lot to go. Okay, let's do it. Bite the bullet, go. There are those who say, well, maybe we can do part 2. See? Okay, continue. There are those who say that this is what Rav Yosef said. Here we are dealing with a case where the buyer performed an act of acquisition at the time he purchased the land from the robber's possession, thereby formalizing a condition that should the field be appropriated from him, he will be reimbursed for any enhancement in its value. Since he acquired this right at the time of the purchase, it does not appear as though he is receiving interest. Abaye said to him, but is it permitted for one to borrow a se'ah for a se'ah in a case where he performed an act of acquisition, formalizing such a condition at the time he purchased the land from the lender's possession? Isn't it still considered to be interest and therefore prohibited? Rav Yosef said to him, there, with regard to borrowing se'ah and returning se'ah, is a case involving a loan, whereas here it is a case involving sale. Buying at a low price and selling it for a higher price is not considered to be interest. Stop here. Be continued with part 2.